Hello, here is our presentation on Foundations of Georgia's Government, which will cover the topics of separation of powers, checks and balances, citizens' rights and responsibilities. So what is our state constitution? How is it set up and how was it developed? It's the governing document that explains what our laws of the state are, what our government offices are, and we as citizens, what our rights and responsibilities are. The structure has a preamble, which is similar to the U.S. Constitution. They also have a preamble, which is basically an introduction. We have 11 main articles, which are basically the sections and paragraphs of the Constitution. These are what each of the articles cover. Now, Article 10 are amendments to our state constitution. Some of our amendments to Georgia's constitution are blended in the appropriate article. So if there's a law that is passed about education or an amendment that's passed about education, it'll go into Article 8 instead of into Article 10. But when an amendment is passed that does not match one of the other articles, it goes into this section. The U.S. Constitution does not blend in its amendments. They are attached to the end of the U.S. Constitution, and the first 10 amendments are known as the Bill of Rights. Our three branches of government are just like the U.S.'s three branches of government. We have an executive branch, a legislative branch, and a judicial branch. The executive branch is going to carry out the laws that are made by the legislative branch, and the judicial branch is going to evaluate or review these laws. Do they agree with our state constitution? And if they're not in agreement, then they can send them back to the legislative branch. So here's our structure of our U.S. government. We have our U.S. Capitol, which is our legislative branch. It is bicameral, which means two houses, a House of Representatives and a Senate. Then the White House is the executive branch. This is where the president lives and works. And then there's a vice president. These two people are elected at the same time. This is going to be different than Georgia's executive branch, but we'll talk about that more when we discuss the executive branch. And then we have a U.S. Supreme Court, which is the highest court in the land, and that consists of the judicial branch. Now, how does Georgia's government look different? Instead of the U.S. Capitol, it's the state capitol. We are still bicameral with the House of Representatives and a Senate. The governor's mansion instead of the White House. We call our legislative branch the General Assembly. We have a governor and a lieutenant governor, so very similar to the president and vice president. And then we still have the state Supreme Court. Now, our current governor is Nathan Deal, and our current lieutenant governor is Casey Cagle. Here you can see some overviews of each of the branches and things that are included. The executive branch is the largest branch of government because of all of those different departments that you see there, and there are many, many others that are not listed. The General Assembly is broken, again, bicameral, broken into two houses, the House of Representatives and the Senate. And then you can see all the various types of courts that we have. Now, we will discuss each of these branches in more specifics. This is just an overview structure. Now, so we want to ensure equal power between the branches. When the U.S. government was formed, we were just coming out of the Revolutionary War, and the colonies had been ruled by this king, this monarch, that told them all what to do, and they didn't want this one overruling power, so that's why they created three branches. But they didn't want any of the branches to be more powerful than the other, so they separate the power into each of the branches. You can think of it like a tree. We have multiple branches on a tree, so the tree is supported by multiple branches. It won't fall down by itself. It's got all the branches to support it. We also included a system of checks and balances. And so this is to let each branch know that you have a certain job, but your job cannot be the same as my job. So the executive branch carries out the laws, but they can't make the laws. So the governor can't write a law and say this is a law. Only the legislative branch can do that. And this is exactly how our U.S. Constitution is modeled. So here's a diagram. This is going to be a really familiar diagram, so make sure you use it a lot and don't forget it and basically memorize it. When these branches check on each other, the executive branch can veto legislation. That means basically if the legislative branch makes a law that the governor doesn't like, the governor can say, nope, I'm going to veto it. I don't want it to become a law. The governor can also tell the legislative branch to come in for a special session, meaning that there's something really important that they need to discuss and make a law about, and so the governor can call them in for a special session. In return, the legislative branch can say, oh, Governor, you vetoed our law. Well, we still really want it to be a law, so we're going to override your veto. And you appointed somebody to a position. Well, we can confirm that, or we don't have to. And we can even impeach you if we don't think you're doing your job right, if you're breaking the rules. The judicial branch is going to review the executive orders from the executive branch and make sure that they're in agreement with our state constitution. And then the executive branch can often fill and appoint some court officials to those offices if there was a death and there needed to be somebody appointed to that position until a new election. The judicial branch, again, I talked about this before, they're going to look at the laws that have been passed by the legislative branch and see, are they in agreement with our state constitution, or do they go against it in some way? And then the legislative branch can propose constitutional changes to the judicial branch and say, we need to change our constitution. Is this okay? And they can also impeach people from the judicial branch. Okay, so now we're going to talk about rights and responsibilities of citizens. Now, many of these rights and responsibilities, even though you're only 13, 14, 15 years old, you still have them because you are a citizen of our country and our state. And some of your rights and responsibilities won't come until you reach certain ages, like the right to vote doesn't come until you are 18. So all these rights and responsibilities are found in Article 1 of Georgia's state constitution, and they're modeled after the U.S. Constitution's Bill of Rights. And just like at school, you get certain rights, but you have responsibilities to fill. And so in our government, we have certain rights, but we also have certain responsibilities. We must control our actions so we don't harm others. I mean, that's just, to me, it's somewhat common sense, but it's basically just following the laws. So here are some of the rights that you are granted in Georgia and in the United States. Now, some of these rights, again, are going to pertain to you even at your age, but some of them are not. Like the right to a trial by jury. Being that you're a juvenile, you're not going to have that. And we'll talk about that more when we talk about juvenile justice. But just think about it. A jury of your peers. Your peers are basically all juveniles. So this could be little kids. It could be older kids. It just depends. So you wouldn't necessarily want a 5-year-old making a decision about the rest of your life in a court. All the rest of these, you as a juvenile have the right to. Keep and bear arms, if you don't know what that is going to be the right to have a gun. But there are rules associated with that, responsibilities, okay? Just because you have these rights, there are still responsibilities that you have to obtain to keep the right. So, again, if you harm someone, if you do something immoral, if you break a law, if you infringe on others' rights, you can have these rights taken away from you. So voting is an example of a citizen responsibility. It's something that you don't have to do, but you should do because it makes, you're helping make the decisions for how government is going to work and run, which affects the rest of your life. Some other responsibilities are jury duty and serving in the military when required. Now, jury duty is based on your driver's license registration. So once you reach 18 and you're a registered driver, you could be called for jury duty. And by law, once you are summoned is what you get a summons, you must attend. Now, there are certain things that can get you out of jury duty, but it is a legal obligation and you still have to go about a process to get out of jury duty. I've been called to jury duty 3 times in my life, and the 3rd time I was called to jury duty, but I just had my 2nd child, so I didn't have to go. I was able to get out of my jury duty. Now, in order to be eligible to vote in Georgia and in any U.S. election, you have to be 18. You have to be a citizen of the United States. You have to be a citizen of Georgia and live in the county where you wish to vote. And you have to be registered 30 days before the election. So the election's at the beginning of November. That means that people must be registered to vote by the beginning of October. And you have to have a valid form of identification. This does not have to be a driver's license. It could be a passport, a state-issued ID. It just has to be a very legal form of identification, okay? Now, some people are not eligible to vote because they may have been convicted of a felony and they can't vote until they've completed their sentence, and that includes any parole that they could be assigned. And then certain people may be found by a judge to have certain mental disabilities, and we don't want them to go vote. This could be someone that has, been committed to a mental hospital or has Alzheimer's disease, but still has certain views on how government should run. And this is going to have to be something that their family is going to have to apply for. It's not going to be a very common occurrence, but it is something that can be done to disqualify someone from voting. Elections are held in Georgia, and they are in every November on the first Tuesday after the first Monday. So this year, that election is going to be held on November 7th, I believe. And so that's the first Tuesday after the first Monday in every even-numbered year. So these are going to be our general elections. They're going to be when we're electing national offices or major state offices. We can have other elections throughout the year that are not national and state offices. They're electing local officials or voting on various issues that are in the state. Now, we have two major political parties in our country, and basically what political parties do is they represent people who share similar ideals and interests. They let a voter know what a candidate stands for. And our two major political parties in the United States and in Georgia are Democrats and Republicans. Now, there are many, many, many other minor parties that definitely this year in the election year you're going to hear about, like Libertarians, Green Party, Tea Party, but these are minor political parties. And to my best knowledge, I don't believe any of them have ever been elected to any major national office. They may be elected to serve in our U.S. House of Representatives or the U.S. Senate or at various state offices, but never to any major political office. Oh, let me go back to that. And then there's going to be people that identify themselves as independents. Maybe they have ideals for multiple political parties, and so they don't identify with just one political party. And so they can vote independently. And some of these have been elected, I know, to major U.S. offices, like in the U.S. House of Representatives and U.S. Senate, but never to any major political party or political office. Now, we will hold primary elections. You probably heard about all the primaries this past year that for the Republican Party and Democratic Party that were held throughout the country, and this is to kind of narrow down our pool of candidates. So like the Republican Party that Donald Trump is representing this year had like 20 candidates at one point, and then they started holding primaries, and that began to narrow down the field until some of the people that were getting votes along with Trump decided, you know what, I'm not going to get enough votes to beat him and become the nominee for the Republican Party, so I'm going to drop out and tell my supporters to support him. Now, in Georgia, you do not have to be registered with the political party to vote in the primary, but in some states you do. I used to live in North Carolina, and I had to register one way or another if I wanted to vote in the primary, and I could only vote for that side. In Georgia, you don't have to do that. Okay, so the next several slides are going to be some voter scenarios, and I'm going to do this in a different video on the ThingLink so you can kind of see and look at these scenarios and see, could this person vote or could they not?